Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror in detail. Today we are going to share scary Skinwalker horror stories. First story, Skinwalkers. I was driving through the interstate late at night on one of those roads where it's just empty as far as the eye can see. It's cold, and there's no light other than the dim beams of my '08 Corolla. I lost data a few miles ago, and I just wanted to be home. I was pressing down on the gas. 60, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. In the darkness, I suddenly made out a hobbling figure walking across the road. I slammed on the brakes. The brief instant before I ran over that man felt like an eternity. I memorized every feature of his face before I killed him. He was old, with sagging skin and sunken cheeks. He was bald, save for loose pieces of white hair. But what scared me were his eyes. I looked in his piercing blue eyes, and I knew that his death lasted as long as my murder. Was it my fault? No. He was the one crossing a highway in the middle of the night. He was the one who wasn't looking for traffic. He was the one who didn't see my beams. These things do not make death easier. I got out of the car, against my better judgment, and walked through thick blackness to find the body. For a moment, I almost believed I imagined the whole thing. But then there he was. He looked like roadkill. I will spare you the details, except those that are necessary. Reader, I swear to you on all that is holy that that corpse had no eyes. While his skull was damaged, it wasn't so ruined that his eyes should have been gone. But there were just two pits of empty flesh staring back at me. The next hour, I drove at the edge of my seat. I felt eyes in the woods. Maybe they were wild animals. Maybe. I was beginning to gain some confidence when the street lamps came back. Just then, in the distance, a silhouette hobbled across the street. I braked properly this time. When they saw me, they shuffled to my window. Reluctantly, I rolled it down. "Hi," the young man said. He was tall and crouched down to speak to me. "Are you headed down this path long?" "No," I lied. "I'll be taking the next exit." "That's where I'm headed," he replied enthusiastically. "Do you mind if I ride with you for a bit?" I let him in. After an initial period of discomfort, I began to appreciate his presence. His name was James. He was a farmer, and he owned several acres of land in the area. He seemed a bit old-fashioned with his outfit and mannerisms, but he was a decent man. Finally, I asked the question building on my mind. "So, James," I said, "what's got you out so late at night?" His expression darkened. "I'm looking for my father." In the dim light of the street, I could not help but notice how blue his eyes were. I turned my face to look only at the road. "Why? What happened?" "There's blood on your shirt." It took me a moment to realize my nose was bleeding. As I covered it, he began to speak. "My father," he began, "is a very old man. He's lived a long life. He's not strong enough to work anymore, but he gets restless sitting at home. So he goes on walks, hours at a time. He usually doesn't come back until midnight. Isn't that dangerous? Nothing from the forests would harm us." I could feel James' eyes staring into the side of my head. No, I usually trust him to find his way home. But I heard him yell out, "So something may have happened." Did the old man scream as he died? He didn't. I was sure he didn't. But even if he did, it was miles away. Surely this was a different person. It was impossible. "I asked you a question," said James. "Did you see anything?" As the street lamps whizzed past us, James was continuously revealed in light before being hidden in shadow. When the lights shone upon him, he was a friendly-looking man, even if his smile stretched a bit too far. In the darkness, he was completely invisible apart from his shining blue eyes. "No, you're the first person I've seen in a long time." James tilted his head. "Are you sure?" I gripped tight to the steering wheel. "It's been completely empty. It's haven't dash." James grabbed my shoulder. "Look at me," he ordered, and I did. As we passed streetlights, he was covered and uncovered in light. Each time the dim lights revealed him. He took the shape of a different animal. First a fox, then a wolf, then a bear, then a different man, and finally himself. Through it all, his eyes remained that same color. That same shining blue. It occurred to me that I was being preyed upon. "Are you sure?" he asked. So I confessed. I told him exactly what happened, as it seemed from my perspective. In turn, he listened, and it felt like everything around me fell silent to listen too. My heart rate slowed. When there's nothing else you can do, there's no point in stressing. He let go of my shoulder. I had forgotten he was holding on to it. After a long pause, he spoke. As you leave, do not stop for anything. And when you leave, do not ever come back. Those were the last words he spoke to me. I drove alone after that, but for miles I was watched. There were many other strangers on the road that night. I doubt any of them would have done what James did. Let me go with a slap on the wrist. But he saw me first, and I made it home safe that night. If there's a takeaway from this, it's that I am very, very lucky. The next time I get the lottery wrong or my packages are lost, I will think of this and remember I have spent enough luck to last several lifetimes. Sometimes I will see a bird watching me for a bit too long, and I will know they haven't forgotten me. So I hang a feeder. It's best to be grateful. Second story, the Skinwalkers of Wisconsin. It was a weekend. I was out hunting in the northern forests of Wisconsin. I was walking through the woods. It was near dark when I came across a clearing. It couldn't have been more than 50 feet in diameter. Then I saw it, the largest buck I had ever seen. I then laid down on my stomach and pointed my rifle at its heart. The buck must have heard me as it looked in my direction, but it didn't see me, so it went back to grazing in the field. As I pulled the trigger of my rifle, a large branch snapped behind, and I thought I saw a wolf running off beside me, causing me to flinch and miss my shot, hitting the buck in the side of the torso. As the buck let out a scream, I know I had hit something important as its side was gushing blood. It still ran, but I knew it would die at some point soon from its wound. I just had to follow the blood as it ran. I followed the blood trail for a few minutes before coming across a much larger clearing, at least 300 feet in diameter, and I saw movement at the other end of the clearing. Thinking it was the buck, I got back onto my stomach and chest and aimed my scope at the movement to see what it was, seeing a wolf eating the buck. I was disappointed the wolf had killed the buck before I could, but I just watched it, in awe by the cruelty yet beauty of nature. But then I saw something. Was that a hand where the wolf's paw should be? No, it couldn't be. It must just be a scratch from the wolf. But did it have human teeth? I shifted a bit in my spot to try and see better, snapping a twig. There's no way the wolf could have heard me, but its head then snapped up to me on the small raised plateau I was on. It looked like it had human eyes, and it looked like it smiled at me. And it then stood up on its hind legs, still looking at me, deer's throat gripped in its long-fingered hand. This scared me so much I dropped my rifle, and in the second it took me to look down and grab my rifle again. The wolf was already halfway across the clearing. There was no way it could have gotten there that fast. As I looked back up at it, it stopped running, still looking at me. What the hell? I whispered under my breath, terrified. I stayed where I was and stood up with my rifle aimed at it, still looking at the wolf. There was no way it could be a wolf. But the one thing I've learned from my 16 years of hunting and camping, never turn your back on and run from a predator that was hunting you. The wolf then opened its mouth like it was yawning, but it then let out a scream that sounded part human scream, part howl, and part animalistic screech, as it then looked like the wolf frowned at me like it was disappointed in me standing my ground, before walking back to the deer and crouching down before continuing to eat it, as I then turned and ran for at least an hour back to my car. That horrifying scream playing in my head on repeat before I practically dived into my car. It was the happiest I'd ever been to see that old piece of shit in my entire life as I then drove home. I didn't turn the radio on, I just drove in silence. When I got home, I just cried in my car from fear of what had happened and joy from finally being safe for at least 5 minutes before finally getting out of the car and running into my house, locking every door and window, and pulling every curtain shut. If you ever go hunting in the woods of northern Wisconsin, do not stay if you come across a wolf eating. Those things don't like it when you stare. Third story. My friend has been acting weird since we went camping. I'm sure now it has to be a skinwalker or a changeling, something that takes people and wears them like masks. Everything I found online points to this. All the weird stuff at the campsite, the way Kane's been acting, it all fits. It all fits. I can't sleep anymore. because I know what this means for Kane. He's gone. Really gone. I've spent hours desperately searching for answers, clicking through endless forums and websites until my eyes burned from the blue light. There was this one thing, this tiny sliver of hope about a Navajo healer who might be able to help, but who am I kidding? Once they take your face, it's gone forever. And hell, maybe I'm wrong about everything. Maybe it's not even Skinwalker. The internet's full of lies, and I'm losing my mind trying to separate truth from fiction. I don't know what to do anymore. Kane's gone. Back to the story, you know how in part 1, I said shit had gone a lot worse. Yeah, let me catch you up the rest of the way. Kane had left last night. That's when I went on my internet frenzy of collecting information. I still can't figure out what it wants with my family. This is a long shot. It seems as if whatever entity or force took my friend's face was completely unprepared for the complexity of human relationships and the myriad of connections that come with it. As time passed by, more and more people began to notice the oddities surrounding my friend's disappearance. Whatever it may be, quickly became aware of the growing suspicion surrounding his behavior. Initially, I believe it was merely trying to learn the nature of human life, perhaps learning how to mimic emotions and social cues in order to fit in. But now it has shifted its focus. Now, I can't shake the feeling that it's on the hunt once more, seeking its next victim, its next face to wear like a mask. The uncertainty is what chills me to the bone. Will it target Kane's family? Or perhaps my own family, who remain blissfully unaware? The thought of it preying on an innocent stranger is equally disturbing. The possibilities are endless. What had me stumped is what drives a creature to abandon the wilderness. Perhaps the shadows of the forest no longer satisfied its hunger. Hunger can drive animals to odd things. That morning, desperation drove me to some questionable choices. I found myself following instructions from the darkest corners of the internet, stumbling around my house with burning sage like some cut-rate exorcist. I even caught myself browsing sketchy websites for silver bullets. And when you're seriously considering buying ammunition from someone called Wolf Slayer 420, you know you've hit rock bottom. Kim noticed something was wrong before I even worked up the courage to tell her. During our phone call that afternoon, while the bitter smell of sage still hung in the air, her voice carried that edge of worry I'd been dreading. "You're not yourself," she said. I try to play it cool, brush it off with a laugh, but you can only pretend for so long that your world isn't unraveling. The truth kept clawing its way up my throat, demanding to be heard. I hesitated, my voice barely above a whisper. "Kim, I need to tell you something. It's going to sound crazy, but I think something's seriously wrong with Kane." The words tumbled out, a mix of fear and desperation. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment I wondered if she was still there. "What do you mean?" Her tone mirrored the turmoil brewing inside me. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. "I don't know exactly, but ever since we went camping, he's been different. He's been stalking my family, watching me, saying things that don't make any sense." My voice cracked as I forced out the words. "Kim, I think he wants to hurt me." The silence that followed was oppressive, weighing heavily on my chest. And then a soft laugh drifted through the phone, sending a chill down my spine. It started as a gentle, amused sound, but quickly escalated into a maniacal chuckle that made my blood run cold. "Sean, don't be silly. Everything is perfectly fine." My heart sank, a sense of unease creeping over me. This wasn't the Kim I knew. "Why are you acting like this?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're the one acting weird, Sean," she shot back, her tone dripping with malice. "Not me." I felt a shiver run down my spine. This wasn't Kim. It couldn't be. "Kim, this isn't you," I said, trying to reason with her. "Did Kane do something to you?" "Sean, everything will click soon." I didn't hesitate. I hung up the phone, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Who could I trust now? If my own girlfriend was under some kind of mind control, how long would it take for whatever was terrorizing me to claim everyone I loved? I dove deeper into my research, desperate for answers. That's when I stumbled upon more legends of skinwalkers, witches in animal clothing, with the power to manipulate minds and take on human form. I was in over my head, but I had no choice. I had to stop this before it was too late. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside, made me jump. I felt like I was being watched always. The birds perched on the power line outside my window seemed to be staring at me, their beady eyes boring into my skin. Even my neighbor's dog, once a friendly companion, now seemed sinister, its gaze following me wherever I went. I didn't know how to escape this hell I was trapped in. I was losing my grip on reality, and there was no one to turn to. I tried calling Joshua multiple times, but he didn't answer. A creeping sense of dread whispered in my ear that maybe Cain had already struck, that maybe it had taken one of their faces, and maybe it was already too late. I tried calling Cain, but he didn't pick up either. The silence was deafening, and my mind was racing with even more worst-case scenarios. And then, a message from Diane's phone. Cain's mom. Hi, Sean. My heart skipped a beat as I hesitated, unsure how to respond. Diane? What's up? Haha. Diane. I tried again. Haha. I knew then that my worst fears had come true. Cain. I typed, but the text said read below it, and no reply was sent. The silence was yet again oppressive, a heavy weight that crushed my chest again. I knew that Cain had taken his mom's face, that Cain and Diane were probably dead, with no chance of returning. I collapsed onto my bed, knees pressed to my chest, and my face buried in my hands. The tears flowed like a river, and I wept for what felt like hours. I was losing control of my life, and I knew it. The thought of being helpless, of being unable to save my friend, his family, or even myself, was suffocating. As I sat there, consumed by despair, I realized that these logs were my last hope. If anyone ever saw this, I wanted them to know the truth. Don't go camping. If you do, bring sage, a silver bullet, and some gall, because that's what it'll take to survive whatever is happening to me. I took a deep breath, wiped away my tears, and steeled myself for what was to come. I would do more research, try to find a way to stop this, no matter how slim the chances. And then my phone rang. Joshua. He didn't say why, but he told me to come to the house immediately. My heart skipped a beat as I hesitated, unsure if I could trust him. But I knew I had to take the risk. I snuck into my mom's room and grabbed the gun she thought we didn't know about, hidden in her underwear drawer. It wasn't a silver bullet, but it was better than nothing. At least, if something happened, I'd be prepared. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of trepidation wash over me. What was waiting for me at Joshua's house? Was it a trap, or a chance to finally uncover the truth? I didn't know, but I was ready to face whatever was coming my way. I'm writing this as I'm on my way to Joshua's house, my heart racing with every passing mile. I have no idea what to expect, but I know it can't be good. I'll write more after whatever happens, but for now, I'm praying to whatever God is listening to keep me safe. I'll need it. Oh God, this is so much worse than I thought. I had just arrived at Joshua's house, and my mind is reeling. There are 5 cop cars parked outside, and I can feel a sense of dread creeping over me. I got out of my truck, and that's when Joshua came charging at me like a linebacker, tackling me to the ground. I felt my head hit the concrete, and a searing pain shot through my skull, like a migraine mixed with blunt force trauma. As I struggled to catch my breath, Joshua screamed at me, his face twisted in rage. What happened to Cain? What do you know, you little shit? Spit flew from his mouth, hitting me in the face, and I felt a wave of fear wash over me. The police officers rushed over, pulling Joshua off me, but not before he landed a few more blows. Mr. Dunham, calm down, one of them shouted, but Joshua was beyond reason. You know something you're not telling me. You see what he did to my Diane. What did you do to my son? I couldn't focus on the pounding in my head, not with Joshua's anger and fear radiating towards me like a palpable force. He was right, of course. It was my fault. I didn't stop Cain from going into those woods, and I didn't tell anyone when he started acting strange. Now it's too late, and I'm left to face the consequences. As I looked up, I saw Diane laid out on the living room floor. She looked peaceful, like she was finally at rest, but that illusion was shattered when I saw the hole in her chest. It was a ragged, brutal wound, with bits of flesh scattered everywhere. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, and I vomited all over the side of the road. The cops picked me up, checking me for a concussion, but I couldn't take my eyes off Diane's body. This was a crime scene, a scene of horror, and I was right in the middle of it. The police asked me if I knew anything, but I hesitated, unsure of what to say. I wanted to tell them everything, but I knew I'd sound crazy. Maybe Cain had already gotten to them, too. They asked me if I wanted to press charges against Joshua, but I shook my head. No, that's really not necessary. He's just a hurt husband and father. As I walked up to the car where they'd put Joshua, a cop stuck her head out the window. Might not be a great idea, champ. He's not well. But I had to try. I looked at Joshua, who seemed broken, confused, and scared. I could relate to that. Look, Joshua, if I did know anything, I would tell you, or the police, I said, trying to reassure him. But he just looked at me, his eyes filled with anger and suspicion. You know why Cain hasn't been acting right? I hesitated, unsure of what to say, but then someone shouted from near the house, "Officer Gillis, get over here." The cop rushed out of the car, leaving me alone with Joshua. That's when I broke, telling him everything. Look, after we went camping, Cain hasn't been right. I think whatever came back wasn't Cain. I'm so sorry, Joshua. I really didn't know this would happen. Joshua's face twisted in rage, and he spat at me. I've lost my wife, and that's all you can give me? My son is some mythical creature. I knew I had to get out of there fast. You're the only one I can trust, Joshua. I'm going to fix this. I promise. I started walking back toward my truck, but the cops stopped me, telling me I couldn't drive. I had to walk home, feeling like I was being watched, like Cain was already closing in. I'm writing this as I'm sprinting back to my house, my heart racing with every step. I see a crow following me, its black eyes watching me, and I know I'm not being paranoid. Every time I slow down, the bird slows down, and every time I stop, it lands and caws at me like it's taunting me. I just made it into the house, barricading the windows and door with every piece of furniture I could find. I'm standing facing the door, waiting for whatever is coming next. I can hear a light pitter-patter trail from the front of the porch to the front door, and I know I'm running out of time. Luckily, my mom was at work and my sister was at school, so they were safe and didn't have to watch me go into a psychotic episode. A shadow materialized, Cain's silhouette. But my mother's voice drifted through the door, sweet as honey and wrong as a nightmare. "Sweetie, I'm home early from work. Let me in." The doorknob rattled, each tiny movement like thunder in my ears. "That's not you, Mom." The words barely made it past my lips, each syllable trembling with a fear coursing through my veins. "Don't be ridiculous, honey. Your sister's right here with me." A pause, then, "Come on, you idiot, open up." My sister's voice chirped, the familiar sound twisted into something that made my skin crawl. Hot tears carved paths down my cheeks, each drop hitting the floor like a gunshot in the silence. My throat closed up as panic clawed its way through my chest. "Get the hell away. You're not real." Then Kim's voice joined the chorus, but it was wrong, too deep, like someone trying to speak through mud. "Let us in, you moron. We're freezing out here." "Cut the act, Cain. It's middle of summer, you piece of shit. Just leave." The voices merged into something ancient and terrible, a sound that shouldn't exist in our world. My stomach heaved as this demon, screamed through my door. "Open the goddamn door, Sean. You're making your sister cry, Sean. I'm sick of these stupid games you keep playing." Terror crashed over me like a tidal wave, drowning out everything else. My body began to shut down, not in the usual fight-or-flight way, but something deeper and more primal. Like some deprived part of my brain decided playing dead was the only option left. But in my gut, I knew that wouldn't save me from what waited on the other side of that door. I pulled the gun out I had tucked in the back lining of my jeans. The figure was banging at the door to the point where it almost tore the hinges out of the wood, and the doorknob shook so violently the screws fell out until it dropped, leaving a hole in the middle of the door. I watched as Kane slowly bent down and peered his empty eye through the hole to look directly at me. That's when, without thinking about it for a second, I flicked the safety off the gun, held it up, and shot at the door 4 times before lowering the gun. I heard the thud of his body outside the door. I sighed in relief as I went up to the window, pulling back the dresser that covered it, and peeked outside to see Kane was nowhere to be found. I knew I hit him because I could see liquid all over the porch, but it wasn't blood. It was more like a disgusting black sludge with the viscosity of honey. That's when I saw a bird coming straight for the window. I tried to push the dresser in front of the window, but it was too late. Kane had already crashed through the window. I couldn't look away as Kane, or whatever had possessed Kane, began to change. The transformation was like watching every horror movie I'd ever seen, compressed into 30 seconds. His feathers thinned and melted away, each one dissolving like candle wax as his body stretched and swelled to human size. The worst part was the sound. The wet snap of wings twisting into arms, bones crackling like kindling in a fire as they forced themselves into new positions. When the teeth burst through his beak, they didn't just appear. They ripped through like nails through rubber, bringing waves of thick, black ooze that dripped between them. By the time it was over and everything looked normal again, I'd forgotten how to breathe. We were standing there in the middle of my living room. This is when I had stupid, trivial thoughts run through my head like, why did I never go back to check the campsite? Why did I not even try to reach out or find a Navajo healer? Did I care that little about my friend or about my family? But there he was, the creature that stole my friend's face and used it to kill his own mother and terrorize my loved ones. Why? Why would you do this? I stammered. The being that had once been my friend Kane let out a low, menacing chuckle. The sound sent shivers down my spine, and I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. It wasn't even trying to mimic Kane's voice anymore. Instead, it spoke in a strained, raspy tone. Lived 100 years. 100 life forms. 100 places. I took a step back, my mind reeling. Okay, why come here then? Nowhere else to go. What do you mean? The being's eyes seemed to bore into my soul. My people. They were coming. Hungry. I had nowhere to run until he showed up. I knew exactly what it was talking about. You mean on our camping trip? The being just stared at me, its empty eyes seeming to suck the life out of me. And then, in a voice that was perfectly eerily Kane's, it said, "Goodbye, Sean." For a second, I thought it was really Kane, that somehow he had managed to break through the creature's control and was saying his final goodbye. What happened next is almost too horrific to describe. I'm not sure I can even type it out, but I have to try. I have to make sure that someone knows the truth. He began throwing up that black sludge everywhere. The first drop hit my floor like tar, viscous and darker than midnight. Then my friend's body convulsed, and everything went to hell. His mouth stretched impossibly wide. A black waterfall of putrid sludge cascading out, bringing with it a stench that made me think of rotting corpses left in summer heat. The liquid spread across my hardwood floors like living oil, seeking corners, creeping under furniture. That's when I heard it. The wet crack of bones shifting beneath skin. His rib cage moved like something was pushing out from inside, each snap echoing through my living room like gunshots. The bones didn't just break, they exploded outward, each new puncture weeping that same dark filth. The thing that used to be my friend sat there, a human colander dripping corruption, while my living room transformed into a lake of that same corruption. The bile rose before I could stop it, my stomach turning inside out as I struggled to make sense of what I was seeing. Maybe it was the concussion or what was before my very eyes. From the ragged holes in his chest, pale fingers emerged like pale worms after rain. But these weren't burrowing down, they were reaching out. They curled around the edges of his flesh, and then came the sound. I'd torn paper all my life, but this was different. Wet. Wrong. The sound of skin giving way was like wet leather being slowly shredded, each horrible tear punctuated by a sound I can only describe as a sick, wet pop. The fingers worked methodically, clumsily, like a child opening a Christmas present in the dark. Only this gift was my friend's chest being peeled open like a blooming flower made of meat. The scene before me defied reality itself. Kane's body split open like a molting insect, but what emerged wasn't some creature or beast. No, it far much worse. A figure crawled out, leaving behind Kane's empty flesh like a discarded coat. My heart stopped, standing there, dripping with dark sludge that seemed to evaporate into nothing. Was me. Every detail was perfect. The same clothes, the same slightly disheveled hair, even the small scuff on my left shoe. Death would have been a mercy compared to this moment. I thought that since this entire thing began, but now, staring into my own eyes from across the room, I knew it with crushing certainty. Everything's going to be okay, he said calmly to me, in my voice, perfectly. There was no deviation or falter. This creature had perfectly become me. I didn't even know if I was myself anymore. I made a beeline for my room. Everything I own is pressed against my bedroom door. My dresser, my desk, even my mattress. But I can hear the wood starting to splinter, and I know it's not enough. It was never going to be enough. Kane's words still echoed in my head. None of this made sense. I couldn't save Kane. I couldn't save his mom. I couldn't save his dad from his descent into madness. I failed them all. Mom, Shelley, I'm writing this for you. I love you. I'm sorry I couldn't stop this. God, I'm so sorry. And Kim, if you're still you, if that thing hasn't gotten to you yet, I need you to know something. The fight we had, when you said I was losing it, you were right. I just wish I'd been wrong. My hands are shaking as I type this, but you all need to know. Stay out of the woods. When you hear those sounds, those impossible sounds, run and watch your friends. Watch them closely, because if they change, it happens fast. One moment they're themselves, and the next, well, it's something wearing their skin. The door frame is giving way. The hinges are tearing from the wall. I can hear it breathing on the other side. If you're reading this, if you ever meet someone calling himself Sean H. Leroy, that's not me. But by then, it's probably already too late for you. The door's splitting down the middle now. May God help us all, because nothing else can. Fourth story. A skinwalker has been stalking me. I live in Minnesota. Not a lot of interesting things happen here. I'm aware that I'm not supposed to talk about this, but I need to get this out so others know what to do if one of these creatures start hunting them. It happened around last March. I was behind my house where a small playground is located. It was around 9 p.m., and I was bored, so I was on the swing for around an hour, listening to music. After a while, I got off the swing and looked behind me. I saw something across the field and under the trail light. It was tall, way too tall, around 8 feet tall after I went to the light the next day and measured it. Even though this thing was far away from me, like around 70 feet away, I could see it clearly. Its skin was disgustingly pale and was far too tight, ripping at the joints and squeezing onto the body. Its smile, it was a real one. It was trying to imitate a smile. It was twisted and sickening, the teeth a mix of animal and human, way too many to fit in its mouth. I could barely see its eyes. I couldn't tell what color they were, but they were glowing from the trail light. I immediately teared up once I processed what this thing was. I refused to look away from it. I slowly backed up, keeping my eyes on it. I slowly opened the gate to my backyard and shut it as quietly as possible. I slowly walked up the steps to the back door and didn't look away until the back door was shut and locked. I quickly went to my mother's room to just hang out with her and calm down, but I didn't tell her about what I saw. She doesn't believe in these creatures. Later that night, I was on the phone with my friends when I heard a tapping on my window. It was a rhythmic sound, not random like a bird or a bush hitting it. He immediately started crying. This was before I knew what to do. I quickly told my friends what was happening as the tapping moved from the window to the wall beside the window. My bedroom is in the basement, so my window is against the ground. My cat immediately went to the wall where the tapping was and wouldn't get away from it. I called my stepdad, crying that there was someone outside my window. I refused to look, though. I was so terrified. My stepdad quickly went outside to see who the hell was outside and making me so terrified. When he came back, He told me there was nothing and that my imagination was probably playing tricks on me. I didn't sleep that night. After a few weeks, I was at my biological dad's house. I told him what happened, and he immediately became terrified for me. He understands these creatures all too well. He told me what to do and what not to do if it tires to get to me. Once I was back at home, I was on the phone again. It was around 11 at night, and I went upstairs to feed my cat. I then looked outside and saw something, a deer. He watched it for a moment before realizing it wasn't a deer. It was the thing, wearing a deer's skin. It was melted onto its body and covered in blood. I could see the pale arms under the hooves blending in with the snow. I panicked and told my friends what was happening. I ran to my bathroom and locked myself inside. I called my dad and told him what happened. He quickly told me to yell, "In the name of Christ, I command you to stop." He explained to me that Christ was a command and a kind of power, not a person. Me and my father are agnostic, so this makes sense to us. I screamed and cried. "In the name of Christ, I command you to stop." I stayed in there for an hour while my boyfriend tried to calm me down on the phone. My dad had gone to the woods and screamed into them and at the creature, demanding it leaves me alone. After an hour, my boyfriend convicted me that I was safe. It's the best way to protect myself from these things. I eventually went back to my room and fell asleep while drawing. I haven't had another experience with it yet, but since I talked about it, I'm sure I'll unfortunately see it soon. Fifth story. I went camping with my friends. Something is really wrong. 3 years ago, my friends and I decided we would all go on a fun camping trip for the weekend. Like most friend groups, we had a group chat where we discussed plans and other random topics. Typically, our plans are made last minute. Somehow, planning ahead never worked out for any of us. Ironically, the more spontaneous the plan, the more likely it was to actually happen. So you can imagine my surprise when we managed to plan a camping trip in advance, and it actually worked out. All of our parents said yes, and no one had any games or school commitments to worry about. We scheduled the trip for a Friday evening, planning to spend the whole weekend outdoors. When Friday finally came, we were all excited. Some of my friends brought tents and fire-starting gear, while others packed safety equipment just in case. The only downside? We had to hike a trail to reach the campsite. I had work that night, so I was the last one to start the hike. I got off at 8:30 p.m. and made it to the trailhead by 8:50. The hike would take an hour at most. Keep in mind, I lived in Colorado, so wildlife was always something I had to watch out for. But little did I know, wildlife would end up being the least of my concerns. As I started along the trail, my mind began to race. I'd always been someone who overthought everything. My thoughts spiraled. What if a bear comes out and eats me? What if my blood sugar drops and we're out of snacks? What if someone is stalking me from behind the trees? Eventually, those thoughts faded, and I found myself more focused on the music playing through my headphones. As I kept walking, I realized my blood sugar was actually starting to drop. I stopped for a quick snack break and sat down to rest. I've been a type 1 diabetic since birth. Ever since I was 18 months old, when my pancreas decided to retire early, my life has revolved around managing sugar intake. All that really did was turn me into a sneaky kid who constantly found ways to sneak sweets. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be normal. But then again, this is my normal. I don't have a single memory of life without diabetes. If anything, not having it would feel abnormal to me. Maybe I wouldn't be the punching bag of the group if I didn't have it. Maybe my mom wouldn't carry so much guilt over it. Either way, there's not much I can do. It's just a shitty hand I was dealt. Once my blood sugar was back at a reasonable level, I stood up and continued down the trail. But after a few minutes, I stopped. My surroundings felt off, uncomfortably unfamiliar. I looked at the map I was using and realized I'd taken a wrong turn. I had been walking in the wrong direction for nearly the entire hour this hike was supposed to take. A chill crept through me. It felt like freezing water was being pumped through my veins. My mouth went dry, and my heart pounded so hard I could feel in my head. Fuck. Okay, this isn't a big deal, I muttered to myself, trying to stay calm. I just walked back until I reached the point where I went off course, then take the right path. But deep down, I was panicking, and I didn't even know why. It wasn't just that I was lost. Something about that one wrong turn felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain, like it had set something in motion. As I retraced my steps, a strange paranoia crept over me. I started walking more quietly. I pulled out my headphones and tried to suppress every sound I made, moving quickly but silently like something might be listening. As I started walking, I began to notice something strange. Why are there two sets of footsteps? I wasn't imagining it. I could clearly hear it. It wasn't subtle. Every time I took a step, something else did too. But it wasn't just that something was walking behind me. No, it was that every footstep it took was perfectly synchronized with mine. Not just the timing, the sound was identical. The only reason I even noticed it was because of a slight delay, just a fraction of a second. I know, that doesn't make much sense. If it stepped when I stepped, the sound should have blended perfectly. But it didn't. I could hear the echo of it, like a mirrored version of my own movement, just a half beat behind. I started counting each of my steps and each of the ones I heard. It wasn't the idea that someone might be there that scared the shit out of me. No, it was the realization that something was there copying me. Perfectly. That's not something a person can do. No human can replicate another person's footsteps exactly. Not down to the sound, weight, and rhythm with 100% accuracy. Most people, when they think they're being followed, will call out, ask who's there, or maybe even run. They'll make it obvious that they know. I wasn't going to do that. I decided to play it smart. Act clueless. The plan was simple. Keep calm, walk like everything was fine, and the moment I reached the parking lot, run to my car, lock the doors, and get the hell out of there. I started texting my friends about what was happening. None of them took it seriously at first. One of them even joked, record it. So I did. Surprisingly, the recording made it clearer. You could hear it. The sound of multiple footsteps, perfectly synchronized, but with that strange delay. The second they heard it, the tone shifted. Suddenly, they were asking real questions. Where are you? How close are you to the campsite? I told them my plan. Then I shut off my phone. I wanted to seem unaware, but not vulnerable. That's when I think it started to get impatient. The footsteps weren't perfectly in sync anymore. They were slipping, getting sloppy. Now anyone could have heard it. It wasn't subtle anymore. At first, I couldn't figure out why it was giving up the illusion. Then it hit me. It wanted me to know it's there. Now I had two options. Stick to the plan and keep walking, or abandon it and run in a different direction. Option 2 became the obvious choice real fast. The footsteps started to charge. I don't even have words for how fast they moved. Unreal, like something out of a nightmare. But the worst part? They weren't behind me. They were in front of me. This entire time, I had been walking toward it. I never saw it. It was too dark. But I heard it, running straight at me, with that impossible, inhuman speed. And that's when the real fear hit me. I can't even begin to describe the fear I felt. It wasn't just the kind that makes your heart race. This was deeper, primal. My chest tightened so hard it felt like my ribs were closing in on my lungs. My heartbeat wasn't just pounding, it was slamming like it was trying to break free from my chest. Every beat hurt. My skin went cold and clammy, like all the warmth in my body had been sucked out through my face. It felt hollow, like my skull was trying to collapse in on itself. My mouth was so dry it felt like sandpaper, like I hadn't had water in days. Even my thoughts weren't normal. They didn't come in words anymore, just sharp flashes of panic like alarm bells going off in a language I didn't understand. This wasn't just fear. This was my body reacting like it knew something was wrong, something it couldn't see but felt. I bolted off the trail and into the woods. There was no way I could outrun this thing in a straight line. Whatever it was too fast. I ducked between trees and ran in every direction I could, desperate to break its line of sight. I don't know how long I ran. Minutes? Hours? My lungs were on fire, every breath a knife in my chest. I finally stopped when I realized the footsteps were gone. But so was the trail. I had run so far, turned so many times, I couldn't tell where I came from. And to make things worse, it was dark. Not just can't read my phone dark. I mean pitch black. I couldn't even see 2 feet in front of me. I reached for my flashlight. Just as my fingers brushed the switch, something stopped me. Not a feeling, an instinct. It was deeper than thought. Something primal, ancient. A survival reflex that didn't feel like it came from me. Then I heard it. A voice in my head. One I wasn't in control of. Don't. I froze. I don't know why, but I knew if I turned on that flashlight, I'd die. Move, it said. So I did. I walked forward, straight ahead for what felt like minutes, hands out, blind. Stop. I obeyed. My body wasn't mine anymore. I was just following orders. Silence. Then the voice returned, louder this time. H-I-D-E. My stomach dropped. Hide? What do you mean? I couldn't see anything. How was I supposed to hide in a forest? I couldn't even see. H-I-D-E. The voice repeated sharper, more urgent. And that's when I knew, whatever had been chasing me, it wasn't done yet. It was close. My gut was right. I heard footsteps again. I dropped to the ground and pressed myself behind the largest tree I could find, heart hammering, breath shallow. I didn't move, didn't blink. A horrible thought crept into my mind. What if it's a Wendigo or a skinwalker? It didn't seem that far-fetched. I do live in Colorado. The idea only made the crushing sense of dread worse. I heard it begin to circle. Its steps were slow, deliberate, like it knew. Are you in? The voice in my head, loud, sudden, panicked. It caught me off guard. I barely had time to register what it said before I heard it, the footsteps charging straight toward me. It found me. I ran. I zigzagged wildly, cutting through trees, not caring which direction I went, just moving fast and erratic. I ran until my legs burned and my lungs begged for air. Then I stopped. I collapsed to the ground, crouched behind a thick brush, too exhausted to go any further. I could only pray I had lost it, that maybe, just maybe it gave up. That's when I heard it. An ear-piercing scream ripping through the silence of the woods. It came from behind me, close but somehow distant, like it echoed from somewhere it shouldn't have been. I froze, paralyzed by fear, waiting for the voice, the real voice, to guide me. And then I heard something else. James? Holy shit, James, is that you? Eric. It was Eric's voice. My friend. Every ounce of fear drained from my body in an instant. Relief flooded through me. I was about to jump up, call out to him. But then the voice returned. D-O-N-T. Why? Why did it say that? I listened anyway. And within seconds, I realized why. It was there, looking for me. That didn't make sense. I had just heard the scream behind me. Not even seconds ago. And now, Eric's voice. But it wasn't him. None of it made sense. Before I could spiral any deeper, something pulled me back to the present. Something far worse. I could see it now. And this wasn't a Wendigo. It wasn't a skinwalker. It wasn't anything I could recognize. It was tall. No, inhumanly tall. Its limbs stretched so far they nearly touched the ground, and its fingers dragged through the dirt with each movement. The nails. God, the nails. They were long, jagged, soaked in something dark, blood, maybe. And they weren't just sharp. They looked designed to tear through flesh. But the worst part? I couldn't even see its face. It was so tall, its upper half disappeared into the tree canopy. Its torso was skeletal, thin, bony, and its skin had the texture and color of bark, almost perfectly camouflaged in the night. I began to inch away, slow and silent. But then, snap, a twig underfoot. It heard it. No, it reacted to it. Instantly. It didn't turn like a person. It didn't move naturally. Its entire body stopped, frozen mid-step, and then just its neck turned. Long. So disturbingly long. It peered down at me. The rest of its body didn't move, only the neck, twisting in an unnatural angle. I didn't wait. I didn't want to see its face. I ran. The voice screamed in my head again, this time with pure, urgent panic. Run. The footsteps came fast, too fast. They didn't sound like running. They sounded like something charging through the woods, tearing through branches, eating the distance between us like nothing. It roared, but the sound, it wasn't the scream I heard earlier. This time, the voice in my head started shouting commands. Left, right, faster, slower. I followed them blindly. My feet pounded the ground, lungs burning, vision blurring. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to keep moving. Then, stop. I collapsed behind a fallen log, gasping, body trembling, and for the first time I realized it was gone. Somehow, the thing was no longer chasing me. Quiet, the voice whispered. I obeyed. Not a sound, not a breath too loud. Then another word. Snack. And that's when I understood. My blood sugar, the running, the fear, the adrenaline. It had drained me completely. I was crashing, and if I didn't eat something soon, I wasn't going to survive, even if the monster didn't get to me first. I pulled out a candy bar and began eating as quietly as possible. It had been a good 15 minutes. The voice had gone silent, and everything around me was dead quiet. Not peaceful, not still, just wrong. I tried to reassure myself that I was going to make it out alive. But no matter what I told myself, I couldn't shake the feeling. I couldn't calm down, because in my gut, I knew this only ended one way. Listen, the voice returned, cutting through the silence like a blade. I listened, and then I heard it. James! The voice was uncanny. Have you ever watched the Mandela Catalog? It sounded exactly like that, like a warped imitation of a real voice, stretched and hollow, echoing from something that wasn't human and never had been. Turn around. I turned, and standing there was a humanoid figure. But it wasn't human. Its left arm was half missing, torn away, bone exposed. The rest of its body looked decayed, rotting like a corpse left out too long. And its proportions off. Some of its limbs were too long, others grotesquely swollen or twisted. Its smile glowed faintly in the darkness, so wide, it had torn the skin around its mouth. Blood still clung to the shredded flesh, and I could see inside. Ropes of dark, stringy blood stretched between jagged teeth, like it had just chugged a gallon of blood. It didn't speak again. It just stared. Then in one motion it dropped to all fours and screamed. A high-pitched, bone-shattering shriek, inhuman, violent. Then it charged. I didn't even get the chance to run. It was too fast. It grabbed me. And then nothing. Just the sound of flesh tearing. Pain. Then, darkness. I woke up in agony. Every inch of my body hurt. The first thing I noticed was the light, broad daylight, pouring in from behind me. I was lying at the entrance of a cave. Next to me was a pile of bones. Definitely human. In front of me, nothing but pitch blackness. The cave stretched deeper than I could see. I didn't have time to process anything before I heard it again. That thing. It was already chasing me, back on all fours just like before. But this time, there was distance between us. I had a head start. I pushed myself to my feet, ignoring the pain, and ran. Faster than I ever have in my life. It screamed again, a horrible, piercing scream that ripped through the air. It was so loud, I thought my eardrums would burst. But then, I noticed something. The scream wasn't behind me. It sounded like it came from in front of me. I didn't look. I just kept running, my feet pounding the trail until somehow I made it back. Back to the parking lot. Back to my car. And the police were already there. They rushed me, took me in. I was barely conscious by that point. I hadn't realized just how messed up I really was. The thing had bitten a chunk out my shoulder. Deep, rag scratches tore across my back. Some of the wounds were already infected. They asked me what happened. I lied. What was I supposed to say? The truth? That a monster in the woods stalked me for a week and left me to die in a cave full of bones? They'd have locked me in a padded room. I had been missing for a week. A whole week. And somehow I survived, which made no sense. I didn't have my backpack. My insulin was gone. My pump was missing. There's no way I could have gone a week without it. No way I could have gone that long without water. Yet, I did. Somehow. Recovery was long and hard. Therapy was even worse. Eventually, I told the truth. The therapist gave me the usual canned response. Trauma interferes with our memory. Yeah, I know what I saw. She made me talk about it a lot. And that's when I started putting the pieces together. The screams. The voice in my head, who I thought was a guide, it wasn't guiding me out. It was leading me deeper. There weren't just one of those things. There were two. Every time I heard that scream, every time I thought it was in front of me, it was actually right behind me. They played with my perception, bent my senses, used sound, and hoped to trap me. They weren't hunting me for the kill. They were playing with me. And I think that's the part that breaks me the most. They kept me alive on purpose. They let me wake up. Again and again. I wasn't unconscious for a week. I wasn't asleep that whole time. I kept waking up. But every time I opened my eyes, it was night. Every time, I'd forget what happened the time before. And every time, the chase would begin again. Sometimes I'd run. Sometimes I'd hide. Sometimes I'd hear a loved one's voice calling out to me. Eric, my mom. But they weren't real. The second creature, whatever it was, it mimicked them. Used their voices. Their faces. It gave me hope just long enough to lead me into the jaws of the other. Every night, the game reset. And every time I lost. I know this now because the memories are coming back. Slowly. In flashes. In dreams. I wasn't asleep for a week. I woke up 7 times. 7 nights. 7 rounds of fear, pain, and false hope. I even went into the cave. The same one it always came out of. I think I lived in it for some of those nights. The memories are still blurry, but here's what haunts me the most. Why was the last time different? Why did I wake up in daylight? Why was that the only time I made it out? I ran 10 minutes from the cave to the trail. That's far, but not far enough to explain why the pattern broke. It doesn't make sense. And maybe it's not supposed to. Some things are random for a reason. Some horrors don't follow rules. This is just what I remember, my perspective. But I know one thing for sure. It's over now, and I am never going camping again. No, I'm never going near the woods again. Thanks a lot for watching the video. Till the end, subscribe to Horror in Detail for more videos. Drop your suggestions in comment section.